speaker for today is a global futurist, strategic advisor, and the CEO of Fast Future Research and Fast Future Publishing. He advises business, government, and NGO leaders around the world on how to prepare for and create the future in an increasingly disrupted world. He's the author and editor of the book The Future of Business. We have limited numbers of copy available for you to take with you home, please. He's not only a thought leader, but also a truly digital leader. Today we are proud to have him here with us. Please welcome Mr. Rohit Talwar.
Well, good morning, and thank you for inviting me here. So what I'm going to try and do is to explore with you this whole opportunity around artificial intelligence, but also to raise an issue that I think is becoming more and more critical for organizations. And that is that as we increasingly move to a digital model for our businesses, particularly more mature businesses, the risk is we become identical to our competitors. If I look at the banks today and their online services, there's no difference. And actually, the more we become the same as our competitors, the less differentiated we are, the more of a commodity we become. And the risk is that we actually start to accelerate our own decline. So there's a real challenge here, which is about how do we use digital to really support people and to make sure we keep people at the center of the story. Because what we know is that society has been trained and educated to have a job, to earn money, to create a living for itself, to feed its family. And if we don't take that into account in the digital path we're pursuing, then we're only creating more chaos in society. So that's the challenge we face, is how do we take advantage of the technology without it replacing humanity? And also to ask the question of, just because we can do it, does it mean we should? We're a publisher, we are an exponential publisher, so our first book, the one on the table, we did in 19 weeks with 62 contributors, 60 chapters, taking the traditional publishing model and turning it on its head. And our view is you can bring that exponential thinking to any industry, and that's without artificial intelligence. Some of the future stuff we're doing on the new books are really exploring how we can use AI in the process of creating content and customizing content. So we're creating a new model for a publisher. But I'm not really going to talk about that today. I'm going to explore these issues around what is AI for those that don't know, how could it have an impact, where is it having an impact, and how do we deal with the issues and get going with AI in our own organizations. And what we know from our research and our consulting work and from all the authors who've contributed is there's a very common story about how people avoid being shocked by the new. And that is that they think about 3 time horizons. So right now, they're thinking about what are those critical things we have to do to move our business forward in the next 12 months, one of which I think for everyone is to really understand AI. You can't make good decisions about the technology if you don't understand it. In 2015, in September, I was in Shanghai talking to one of the world's biggest law firms. And one of the good guys stood up and challenged me and said, I don't think AI is worth looking at. And I said, why is that? And he said, well, I worked in a company where they did an AI project 10 years ago, and it wasn't very good. And I was like, well, actually, if you're a lawyer advising your clients, I wouldn't be charging very much if your knowledge is 10 years old. Someone else from that same company stood up and said, I don't believe we need to change. What you're saying is rubbish. I see no evidence in the marketplace of a need for change. I hear nothing from my clients, and that's an important phrase, I hear nothing, i.e. I'm not listening, that says I need to change, and I don't believe from what we're doing that we need to change. That company, S.J. Berwin, went into receivership, i.e. went bankrupt 2 weeks ago in the UK, because it wasn't because they were doing too much thinking about the future. The challenge is really to make sure that one of those vital things we're doing, one of those few things that we really do well this year, is get our heads around AI. Secondly, we have to think about, in the next 1 to 3 years, where is growth going to come from? And that's one of the areas where, if we look at what's changing in the world around us, we'll see how the technologies can help us, how they can create new options, or how they might challenge the assumptions we have about what the future looks like. And finally, we need that 4 to 10 year radar. And that's where I think AI is really critical, because it really will reshape industries. Armed with that knowledge, then we have about a 3-year window to really get our organization thinking digitally, being agile, being smart, being innovative, so it can cope with any scenario for what might come in the future. But that really is about understanding how technology is changing our world. And what we see is there are risks and opportunities. So if you take the legal industry, a $650 billion industry, most lawyers are worried about how AI will destroy their jobs and make it an irrelevant industry where the client does it all themselves with technology. But the other side of that story is that actually AI and other emerging technologies are rewriting the global economy. It's $78 trillion today, will be about $128 trillion in 10 years' time. So actually there's a phenomenal opportunity to tap into how these technologies are changing the world, particularly if you're a law firm or a service provider. The question for most of us is, are we ready to make that journey? Most of the time when people tell me why they don't have time to look at AI, it's nothing to do with AI, it's to do with all the other crap they're doing in their business that's no longer relevant. And what we see is really what's going on is a clash between two worlds. On the one hand, we have this new planet of people born digital, thinking digital, you're hearing them here. They don't see cars, they don't see planes, they don't see houses, all they see is data. On the other hand, you've got those of us who are born physical, where we're trying to use the technology in our business, but we don't have a digital mindset. So we just can't get our heads around what Uber's doing or what Google's doing, or when Uber suddenly says we're moving from being a taxi company to creating flying cars. No one understands why they're doing it because they're bringing a physical mindset. Whereas Uber is saying, actually, if we've got the data about you and where you want to travel, everything else is just implementation. And so our challenge is to make that journey. And what we see is the exponential technologies are really blowing our minds. You know, depending on who you talk to, 7 to 10 years from now, we could have computer systems that are 128 to 1,000 times more powerful than they are today. And it's not just IT, we're seeing this in every sector of science and technology, exponential rates of improvement. And really what we're moving into is this world with two competing mindsets. The Star Wars, Donald Trump mindset that says winner takes all, destroy the competition, you know, obliterate anything that you don't like, and really be the most powerful player in your industry, versus the abundance mindset, the Star Trek mindset that says actually all of these technologies are giving us virtually free food, free transport, free information distribution. And AI is very much a Star Trek technology. It puts us in a position for abundance. And what we see is it's playing out now. So robotics is a field of AI. This is a robotic construction system that lays 1,000 bricks per hour. That is 16 times faster than a human. That is exponential. This is a construction company in China that designs its buildings using AI, prefabricates the structures in the factory, and then simply plugs them together like Lego bricks on site. And it built this 57-story building in 19 days. And this is not a one-off, this is their model. What we're seeing is that thinking where people are saying, how do we use AI to transform our business? And how do we use smart thinking is coming into all sorts of sectors. Airbnb handles 90 times more employees than 90 times more bedrooms than the average hotel group per employee. Tangerine Bank handles 7 times more customers per employee than the average bank. The people they have are no different to the people you have. They're simply allowing them to think about how do we use these technologies to support bright people to create innovation. The really powerful one for me is Local Motors. They can produce a new car model 1,000 times cheaper than a typical car company. Why? Well, the typical Ford has about 5,000 components. The typical 3D printed Strati designed with AI has 50 components. These guys, a typical car factory requires an output of about 50,000 cars to make money. These guys are creating factories around the world which will produce 2,500 cars and make a profit because they're 3D printing. They're totally transforming how we think with these exponential technologies. And obviously there's a big commercial return. You look at Uber's valuation, it's valued at more than Ford and General Motors combined. And it doesn't own a single car or a single driver at the moment. It's building driverless vehicles. So AI then, what's that about? We all know about AI. It's really about creating technologies that at least behave in the same way as humans do terms of reasoning, processing language, interpreting information. By the way, you can have copies of all the slides, but you're welcome to take pictures as well. And why is AI getting exciting now? Well, there's a few things. One is more and more money. The likes of Google and Facebook, these giant information processing engines, have thrown huge amounts of money at this. Baidu, all sorts of people. Secondly, big data. We're amassing the kind of data that lets the machine learning systems really, become more powerful, and we've needed AI to process that data. Cloud computing is supporting the distribution of this, faster hardware, and real advances in machine learning. So we've gone from machine learning programs being 600,000 lines of code to now the best ones are less than 100 lines of code, but incredibly powerful, where they can read people's lips better than any human. We're getting very powerful. The game changer happened last year when Google's DeepMind, they created a system called AlphaGo that could play Go. They didn't actually teach it how to play Go. They taught it how to learn. It watched millions of Go games. Go is the most complicated board game in the world, more than 560 million possible moves. So they couldn't teach it how to play Go. They just taught it how to learn. It beat the world Go champion by 4 games to 1. And each time he retired, it didn't win outright. Each time he gave up because the machine was outthinking him. It was being more creative. It was gaming him and getting him to make mistakes. That level of capability with AI was about 10 years ahead of where we thought it would be. Now people are saying we could use this to redesign economies, to redesign food chains, to design drugs, to create even a whole new field of science. That we don't know where it could go. We could very quickly move towards something that looks like artificial general intelligence, where we have systems that are as smart as humans or smarter. And once they become as smart as us, they'll move on and become smarter. And what we see is the range of areas where people are now applying AI is growing by the day. There isn't a single day go by where we don't see something in the news or on TV where people are telling us how AI could impact our world or new applications. Pretty much every business sector you can think of is starting to use AI. People are using it across all sorts of applications in their business now, and not even realizing a lot of the time now. If you deploy a big data insight tool, you're using some AI. If you use a sat nav, you're using AI. If you use a smartphone, you're using AI. If you buy a financial services product which involves credit scoring, you're using AI. It's embedding itself in our world right now. And if you look at all the projections, basically everyone, and projections are always wrong, but they're a useful indicator. The basic sense is AI will be penetrating business more money will be spent on it, more applications will be built. And really last year was the explosion year for AI. A huge amount of money went into it. A lot of new applications, a lot of new tools emerged for people to use as individuals, for businesses. A lot of the big companies started to release their AI tools for you and I to use. So Google, Amazon, IBM released versions of their tools which you and I could use, so we could put our data into it, use their machine learning software. They benefit because their software is getting smarter all the time. But it sort of democratized access to the technology. And what we know is that as the tools get more powerful, more users, more data, the application range is going to grow, and they'll be available to more of us. And this year, what we can definitely see is there's a lot of tools coming that will hit the small to medium enterprise marketplace. So it's available to everyone now. And what we're seeing is people beginning to recognize that they can create entirely algorithmically driven businesses. We're seeing AI outperform humans. For example, this is an AI hedge fund that's outperforming the benchmark. It's outperforming humans in this area. It's just getting smarter and smarter the whole time. People like MasterCard are using it to training the system based on their best sales agents, and then using the AI system to sell to customers. And each time a new case comes up that it hasn't been trained on, it learns from how the human deals with it, expands its knowledge base. And now it's got to the point where it can actually make recommendations that the human wouldn't, because it's looking at so many situations and it's learning faster and looking at more data than any human could. In terms of chatbots, everywhere you look now, chances are if you talk to somebody over the web, you're talking to a chatbot. In many cases, people are saying they prefer talking to the chatbot when it comes to getting information quickly, because humans don't know as much as a chatbot, because the chatbot can access everything really fast. In health, we're seeing it being used from everything from surgery to drug discovery now. IBM's Watson can outperform cancer doctors in diagnosing cancer patients. This is probably the most sophisticated application so far, the bratwurst bot. This actually recognizes your preferences, so each time it cooks your bratwurst to your personal preference. What more powerful application could we want or desire? These guys, Deep Knowledge Ventures, actually have, and it's not a robot, it's basically a piece of AI software that's part of the investment board. And actually what they're finding is because it can do such sophisticated, deep and comprehensive due diligence, it can actually, it's making better decisions, or they're thinking it's making better decisions than the others on the board. It can spot when there's a similar venture somewhere else that we might not have seen. And actually the humans are now deferring to the software. This is a financial system which is really interesting, which uses AI to help you find out what your friends are buying and then advising you on whether to buy the shares or not in those companies. So depending on the trends and patterns of purchasing behavior of your friends, it's suggesting what you might spend money on, which is kind of a reasonable thing to do, to say who's actually winning and losing in the marketplace today and helping you make the transitions. In marketing, we're seeing tools that help us get smarter and smarter in targeting, using the right language to hit our customers. So Caesar's Casino, I mean, you can see here the numbers, I don't have to read them to you, but incredible improvements in marketing performance by just using insight from customer data and using clever marketing techniques, using a very wide database of language to say, how do we create the right tools? These guys, Refuel, you can do a targeted advertising campaign with them using AI for $99. So you're sending different messages to different customers based on how they interact with you. We're now seeing, many of us know Siri or the equivalents on our phone, quite a vaguely intelligent tool. The daughter of Siri, created by the same people, is called Verve. And for them, this is a global brain where you will genuinely just have any conversation you want and it will answer any question for you. And it will be your interface to the world, your intelligent agent interacting with the world. Some of the more interesting applications we see people working on are the liar scores, the liar analysis. So when a politician is speaking, I'm not suggesting anyone in particular, it will be able to tell you whether that data is true or not, or where that data comes from, what the right statistics are, what the comparison. So if we say, you know, for example, I don't know, US crime rates are at their highest ever for the last 47 years, on our screen it will show you where that figure comes from and what the real figures are. You know, so we'll be able to have an independent verification of the data, which I think would be quite useful. In transport, autonomous cars, everyone loves the idea, or most people love the idea of reduced accident rates, but actually it could eliminate car ownership. The vehicle could take you to work, you pay your taxi fare, it then takes someone else, and basically spends its entire day delivering people to and from their jobs, earning its money and sharing its revenue with the people who made it, the people who service it, the people who fuel it. You don't need that car to be owned by anyone other than itself. It opens up the potential for whole new business models like self-owning assets. We also move to the potential for entirely automated organizations, what are called decentralized autonomous organizations that exist only in software. Many of the unicorns are almost there. The back end of eBay is a DAO. It handles more than 15 million disputes, legal disputes, entirely electronically. So we're already starting to see this stuff happen. And we're seeing lots and lots of tools now that individual businesses can use. There's a whole range of them that help us do smarter sales and marketing, using the data to do deeper and deeper targeting and deeper specific sales strategies. Secondly, there's kind of a range of tools that are helping in the medical space, helping communicate better with patients. And the one I really like is this one that reckons it can predict disasters and make terrorism impossible. If there was a campaign targeted at Mr. Trump, it might be their marketing campaign. And then finally, a lot of ones that are really interesting, which are about helping us communicate with information and helping information communicate with us. So letting code tell us its own story, letting a spreadsheet talk to us as a story rather than just presenting as data. So what do we do about this as leaders? How do you deal with this as CEOs? How do you move forward with AI in your organizations? Well, what we think is, start with a team, put a small group of people responsible for actually exploring what it could do. Business and technology people, but really going out there with an open mind as to what might happen. Do some research. Just whatever we say is not possible, someone is already working on it, or someone's already built a tool to do it. Certainly go and see a lot of the vendors and see what they're doing. Understand what it takes to implement one of these systems in your organization or to use an online tool. Evaluate some, just try them, see what they can do for you. $99 isn't a lot for a trial. Certainly go and look at other companies who are trying the technology and learn the lessons from them. Go to some of the specialist conferences where people are using AI and talking about how they're using AI. And then you get to understand the difference between the hype and what it takes to deliver and what's actually possible today. And then if you're really serious, we'd certainly encourage you to work with universities to say, bring some of your AI students in, we'll show you the data we've got, and let's look at projects we can try together to see whether we can extract new value from our data. We're working with a lot of clients, particularly in legal, where we're helping them set up these programs so that they can just start to do something innovative and not be held back by the lawyers' conservative concerns. They're letting the technologists show them what they could do with the data. One of the biggest challenges I think we face is that AI is quite masculine in the way it makes decisions, mainly because most AI programmers are men. And actually the risk is that our organizations start to eliminate what you would call the feminine in the organization, the culture, the serendipity, the chance connection, all of the things that actually make an organization feel human. And so there's a real challenge about how you preserve the feminine elements of an organization. That's not necessarily female, but what you might call the feminine aspects of who we are. We also know that staff generally don't celebrate when we make them redundant. Or we say, we're bringing in a piece of software, please train it, and then it will take your job. That generally doesn't lead to turkeys voting for an early Christmas. So we have to think about how we're going to handle this and the bigger impact of this on society. And do we start to take responsibility for helping create jobs in the economy for every job we take out? Do we help create a startup ecosystem? We've heard some great presentations about how to do that. And finally, there is a question here, which is, can we afford to wait? Can we put our hand up and block the sun? No. We have to understand the technology, we have to explore its applications in our organization, and we have to do real trials and address the human issues. And we have to do all of that fairly quickly if we want to make sure we're competitive. The author Graham Greene says there comes a time in everyone's life when you have to open the door and let the future in. For me, AI is that wake-up call to every organization that says, now's the time to let the future in and start exploring how it could impact our business. Thank you.